It's party time, and it's time for 4 freshmen to pledge for the Alpha Sigma Rho fraternity. All they have to do is spend the night in the abandoned Garth Manor, a supposedly haunted mansion whose last owner brutally murdered his deformed, twisted family. Marty, Jeff, Seth, and Denise are soon plagued by weird noises and visions of ghosts, but that's just the frat pranking them for kicks. The real horror is yet to come, but it lives under the house and is on its way to kill in the lesser-known 1981 slasher flick, Hell Night. I'm Connor Eyzaguirre.
And I'm Josh Allred.
And this is Filmgazm. Happy Wednesday, listeners. Welcome to the 127th episode of the Filmgazm podcast, coming fresh off last week's 2-year anniversary special. We decided to draw from the book of Filmgazm this week. It's our endless list of random horror, action, sci-fi, fantasy films to see what today's episode would be. And apparently, the book knew this one was a Josh episode because it gave us a slasher film. One that both of us had not yet seen. But before we get into that, it's time for the rewind. I've got 2 updates on today's rewind. One that updates episode 6 on Pet Sematary, and one that updates episode 124 on My Bloody Valentine. First, a Pet Sematary prequel was announced to be in development for Paramount Plus. All that's known so far is that it will be one of the streaming site's first original films, and I find that very ironic. So Paramount Plus, CBS All Access's attempt to rebrand themselves for some reason. And they think the best way to do this is with a Pet Sematary prequel. Thoughts?
I don't know. Unless somebody like really just goes out in left field and really just separates from the entire like movie remake book and tries to find something fresh, maybe it might work. Sometimes I just can't get behind when this kind of lazy stuff comes around. And to like a bigger point, I think we're going to start seeing streaming services possibly start to get bundled. I mean, Amazon's already kind of offering their own channels and stuff like that. But this is another way that the bigger media companies and how you know that the people that are in charge of providing us with entertainment, all they care about is getting money, that they're just going to start banding together and getting more of it, and it'll be a newer version of buying cable channel packages. And however, I think they still leave the consumer with the options to get what they want to get. I'm all about it, but I'm foreboding for me.
Yeah. Well, we've seen, with these streaming services, like they're all so mind-blowingly competitive that the bundle thing, I don't see that happening for a while, because they all almost want to they all want to be on top, and they're kind of willing to do whatever they need to get it. I mean, they've been snaking contracts from each other the whole time. Netflix used to have such a wide variety of shows, and they just keep like dwindling because everyone wants to start their own shit. I mean, Peacock, for instance, is just like people are only buying that for The Office. But in regards to Pet Sematary, I'm such a fan of that book, and I hated both movies. I think they've never gotten this right. And I just don't have any faith in a prequel to a film I don't think they did justice to the story anyway. So, yeah, I just think it's doomed to fail.
I just don't know where they're going to go. Like, what are you going to talk about? Are you going to go really way far back and go all the way back to the Native American Micmac tribe that was first doing all of this? Are you going to go that far back? or are you going to pick up somewhere else? Just like you said, don't have a lot of faith in this. I don't have a lot of confidence that something good can come out of this. I mean, no expectations. Maybe it'll be worth something. I'm not going to break my back to try and watch it when it comes out.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know. It hurts my brain when you see people screaming about putting out original content, and I hate that word, content, putting out original stories and original movies, and then first thing you see from a rebrand is, we're going to go right back to the old well here, and we're going to dig this thing up, see if we can't beat this dead horse a little bit more. And people should understand that their money can influence these kinds of things. If they don't go out in droves and subscribe just to see this, it'll make them go, wait, we might have screwed up here. So who knows?
Well, I think CBS All Access, I mean, the fact that they had to, rebrand and call themselves Paramount Plus proves that they're not doing nearly as hot as they thought they were. And I just, you can rebrand, but we all know who you are. I mean, Time Warner Cable had to start calling themselves Spectrum because of their horrible customer service, but we all still know nothing changed but the name. So yeah, if Paramount Plus really wants to, grab viewers' attention, they'll try a little harder than just picking a slate of films and remaking or prequelizing them. I saw they're turning Fatal Attraction into a TV series too. Like, just stop. Think it through. For fuck's sake. Oh, well.
It's so fucking lazy. It's so fucking lazy. Did you see the new Wrong Turn?
I haven't yet. I haven't seen any of the Wrong Turns.
Okay, well, the first two I liked a lot. I never actually watched anything after that. And this movie was written by the guy who wrote every other movie. And they went back to the well, but they were like, hey, what do you have? A new story. And the guy's like, I got the perfect thing. And it's a total departure from what the previous movies are, which they even poke fun at that in the movie. And it's really very interesting. I just listened to the director, Mike Nelson, talking to Adam Green and Joe Lynch. Joe Lynch directed Wrong Turn 2, which was his first movie, and they were talking about it. And it was really interesting to hear the director talk about that, because what this movie was doing was kind of being a reflection of how America is right now, and it's really interesting. So I would say watch the first two, because the ones after that are all kind of wash, rinse, repeat, and they don't really do much else from what I've heard. I mean, they made 6 of them. Obviously, somebody was paying to see them, and it proves that you can get a lot of mileage out of monsters. But this newer one, I watched it, and I was actually surprised at how well it was put together and made with your expectations of what you're going to see. And really just, it was pretty brutal in points, and I really enjoyed it. So yeah, I definitely recommend it.
Sweet. That's great. I love when a horror franchise can be revisited properly with people who care about the material and develop something new and exciting. I mean, that's why I loved 2018's Halloween so much, because it was going back to the well, but it was also giving us something new and exciting. And that can be done. We've seen it done, and it just doesn't happen very often. And I don't trust, Pet Sematary got 2 strikes now, 3 if you count that sequel from like the 90s. So I'm not holding my breath on that. But if somebody who has an idea gets a hold of it and they create something exciting, well, then I'll eat my words and check it out. Next up, an interview on the horror site Bloody Disgusting features My Bloody Valentine director George Mahalka discussing a possible sequel he's been trying to make for quite some time. His sequel would be titled Valentine Wakes, where the town of Valentine Bluffs has held a memorial service every Valentine's Day for their fallen friends on that fateful day. In this story, Sarah and TJ are married. They have a daughter who is actually Axel's, and Axel has been in a mental hospital this whole time. A new killer surfaces, and Axel is actively trying to stop him. And I got to say, this actually sounds pretty enticing.
Oh yeah, I read that and I was like, holy shit. And the fact that one of the producers and George Malka were like going back and forth with it, and they weren't going to go out and just make something. They wanted to make something that was going to be good and was going to be worthwhile. And he really hit on a lot of the things that I like about My Bloody Valentine, being that it's about these working class, you know, young adults, not teenagers, young adults that are, you know, trying to take charge of their lives or whatever, and they're kind of trapped by the boogeyman of their town. And this kind of plays on that, and really, like, then it becomes a way for them to turn it somewhat into like a team-based slasher in a sense. I really enjoyed hearing him talk about it, and I would love nothing more than for something like that to get put out. I would be very excited, because I just think it's one of those, like, did it really warrant a sequel? Not necessarily. However, being that it's handled in a way where there's some thought put into it. That's one of the things that really gets me around a lot of just, you know, rehashed, repackaged. That's why, as much fun as I have with the 13th movies, there was never a whole lot of thought put into subsequent movies. It was just kind of like, hey, we've got a formula and we're going to ride this thing, you know? So yeah, that interview really made me smile. I was like, okay, this is what I'm talking about. You know, if it takes time, it takes time. And you're definitely riding on the fact that this movie has 40 years later still got people talking about it. So you definitely did something right if 40 years later people are still bringing up your movie. So yeah, I was glad I saw that, and I had to throw it your way, because it was definitely, I mean, it was pretty serendipitous that it popped up right after we did our episode. So it was just like, you know, the horror gods were looking down on us, or up at us, however you want to position them, and we're saying, hey, you guys did good putting that one out there. So
Right on. I love that. Yeah. It's you know, My Bloody Valentine, I had my own issues with it, but overall it's, you know, it's not the worst horror film I've ever seen. And I wouldn't mind, you know, going back to Valentine Bluffs. I think in the right hands, and George Mihalka has clearly been thinking about this for a while. And, you know, if he gets his way, it could be something really special. And that would be the best. So, Hell Night. So, Hell Night was a totally random draw from the book, but as you told me, you'd heard of this one. This is one you've been trying to kind of just catch up on for a while, but never got the chance to. Any particular reason you just never clicked on this one?
I think it's just one of those, like, you're not sure if it's going to be worth your time. I mean, Linda Blair jumps right out at you as being, you know, one of the more prominent, actually probably the most prominent actor in the movie, and you're just like, I don't know if I want to do this or not. And not to mention, and I made a list, like 1981 had a shit load of horror movies coming out, not to mention a shitload of slashers, werewolf movies out the wazoo, just so much going on that this movie definitely, I mean, and I don't want to say rightly so, you're not surprised that it gets lost in the shuffle, so much so that it even affected the preservation of it, and the fact that Shout Factory put out I think it's like a 2K scan of it or something like that from an archival print. It wasn't the actual negative, because the negative's gone, lost. So the cut I watched was on Shudder, and if I'm not mistaken, that came from Shout Factory, and you can see some of the other like inserted scenes, and you can tell the difference because the difference in quality is like night and day. And it sucks because the movie itself looked really good for something that's, again, 40 years old, and it's a pretty much forgotten movie. The fact that it even exists in that condition is pretty awesome. However, you kind of wonder what it could have been if it was preserved. And that's, as much as people are, like, oh, film's dead, blah blah blah, like, whatever's made and is out there should be taken care of. I mean, yeah, because I'm a huge movie nerd. Of course, I'm going to be harping about that kind of stuff because this is art. This is something that, whatever genre it is, I don't care. Film should be preserved. I mean, we've lost so much because of the way film was processed back in the day, that like, because of the nitrates in it, like all like thousands upon thousands of feet of film were just burned and exploded and all this. So like, what could we have? And when I read up on that, I was like, damn, that does kind of suck. But credit to Shout Factory for doing the good work that they do, amongst other, boutique labels that restore films. They did a pretty good job, and I mean, I'm happy that something like this is still around.
So am I, but it also brings up an interesting question of like, what is a classic? Like, why are some horror films, revered and protected from immediately, and then others are, lost and forgotten until somebody finds a copy in their attic? Like, how come, a film like Friday the 13th, which objectively is not better or worse really than Hell Night to some people, how come that movie has such a following, and Hell Night, which admittedly I enjoyed better than a lot of other slashers I'd seen, that one is just, lost in time till somebody finds it? Like, what's the stipulation there?
I mean, that's a very good question. It's very hard. I think for a movie like Friday the 13th, money. I mean, The fact that movie made a shitload of money meant that people were going to look after it. But then there are other movies like Fade to Black. It came out the year before, and it didn't really get a whole lot of fanfare. And then it just kind of fell under the radar for years and years, and only existed on DVD for the longest time. And it was extremely hard to find. If you could find it and you wanted to pay over $100 for a DVD, you could. Which is why when Vinegar Syndrome released it last year for Black Friday, I fucking jumped at it. Not least of all because it's a movie that is oddly relevant today, in how it is kind of like, it's like the Taxi Driver of horror movie fans. It's just a weird like character study of every movie nerd ever, and how he uses film to relate to the world, and slowly just loses his mind because he becomes obsessed with this girl, and it drives him over the edge. And something like that is like, have you seen it before?
I have not, but I've heard you and I think Caleb told me about it once, but it's kind of been circling me for quite a while now. I'm gonna have to just watch it.
Yeah, no, please do. And I think you being a big fan and a writer, and like being able to kind of see things from a big idea perspective, you can definitely catch that. And yeah, it's and that's another one that's like, where does that get so much fanfare for what it does? Oddly enough, there's a connection between Fade to Black and Hell Night. Is the producer Irwin Yabelis. He produced both of these movies along with the first two Halloween movies. And what else did he do? Tourist Trap, another Another one that's like one of these forgotten gems. Joe Bob did it on his return to his show format on his first 24-hour marathon that he did. That was like one of the first movies he did. He came right out the gate with Tourist Trap. And if you haven't seen that weird ass movie, it's a fucking hoot. Oh my God, it's so good. But yeah, this guy produced those movies. So like you kind of see what kind of role he played in creating some of these really interesting and revered movies from the very beginning of one of my favorite decades of horror movies and movies in general.
It's cool because like I'm glad we have this platform to kind of, find these films and talk about them and give them the same attention we would give a bona fide classic. And that's awesome. I love that Shudder also shines a light on these films, that Shudder like adds them to their collection. Films I've never heard of in the slightest, but am now just constantly intrigued by. Films that are rescued from obscurity. It's amazing.
Absolutely. And they also bring out like movies from other countries, like all of the Lucio Fulci movies and the Dario Argento movies and the Bavas and all of those movies that they brought over. I can't tell you how many times I've just breathe a nice relief that I could even have the option to stream in Lucio Fulci's The Beyond if I didn't already own it myself. Like he is probably like up there in like my top 10 favorite directors of all time. Fucking love Fulci. There's just something about that guy. Like his filmmaking is like oddly lyrical and like dream oriented in a way. He's very loose with plot. He's not really trying to like use narrative to drive the story. It's just like one weird sequence after the other. And I cannot wait to dive into some Fulci with you because it's gonna mess with your brain. I'm telling you, you're gonna have weird dreams. I promise you.
I haven't gotten to step into Fulci yet. Italian horror, I'm actually like, I barely really stepped my toe into. I'm still learning, constantly learning. And yeah, I'm very excited to dig into Fulci when we get there.
It's going to be fun, man, because then you can really understand that no matter what language you normally speak in your everyday life, that film itself is a language. And when you can watch movies from other countries and still kind of understand visually what they're doing, it's a beautiful way to communicate. And I've found a lot more comfort in watching a foreign movie and understanding, even though I have no idea about the language and the culture and all of that stuff, being able to understand just on a broad perspective. It's really comforting because you're like, kind of hit you in those soft spots, and here I am getting all fucking mushy. It's like we're all human, man. Like we all feel the same things. So it's oddly comforting.
For me, it's exciting to see the way different cultures perceive fear. And for me, like so far, no one's topped the Japanese. I mean, from what I've seen on my foreign horror journey, it's the Japanese have scared the shit out of me more times than I can count. So I'm excited to see how the Italians measure up.
Oh, they'll definitely get you for sure. If nobody else does, Fulci is going to make you. Yeah, Fulci will get you.
Awesome. Can't wait. Back to Hell Night. It was directed by Tom DeSimone, who directed a ton of porn in the 70s under the name Lancer Brooks. I was looking into his filmography and I just kept seeing like movie after movie and like 10 a year. And I'm like, damn, he was prolific. Then I clicked on him and I'm like, oh, okay, that's why. Just so much porn.
Lots of gay porn. Yeah.
Weird that he would just come out of that and do a random slasher flick in 1981 and then immediately go right back to porn.
Well, probably for the paycheck.
I love that the producers are like, we need a director. Let's get this gay porn guy. Like, there's a story there, and I want to find it.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious, but I'm sure it could have something to do with the fact that he can work within a budget. He can get done what you need to get done, and there's not going to be a whole lot of, you know, fussing and fighting and all that crap. Like he's like, "What's my budget? How many days I got to shoot this thing? All right, let's do this," and just attacks it. Just attacks it. Ruthless efficiency, if you will.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, porn directors, they know what they're doing. I, you apply that work ethic to horror, and you've got a pretty good gig there. That's fucking brilliant. I've never made that.
Hey, time is money. Time is money. Those dicks aren't going to stay hard forever.
Oh my god! I wonder if like one day he got like mixed up and he's like starts giving them like really fucked up like directions, and they're like, "We don't want to do that." He's like, "Oh wait, it's Tuesday." Okay, yeah.
Sorry, wrong movie.
DeSimone, or Lancer Brooks, would also direct episodes of TV shows like Swamp Thing, Dark Justice, and Freddy's Nightmares. So he had just a very interesting and colorful career. Oscar nominee Linda Blair plays Marty. Blair was nominated for her performance in 1973's The Exorcist, a role she was never able to shake, no matter how much she tried. Blair played Regan McNeil in the first two Exorcist films, and she did Hell Night because she wanted to shake her innocent little girl image and portray a strong, independent leading woman. This film actually did the opposite for her career, and she never escaped B-movie success. What do you think about Linda Blair in this film?
Oh no, I liked her. It's always hard to shake her from The Exorcist just because how much of an impact that movie has on the whole genre itself. And it's kind of sad that she could never get out of the shadow of that movie. I really enjoy her. Even when she would do things later on in her career, she definitely was kind of like, you know how they always say like an actor has it.
Yeah,
I say that about Linda Blair. Just some people are born with that innate ability to inhabit a character and kind of just live and breathe on screen, and she does that pretty well. I mean, a lot of the dialogue is kind of clunky at times, and some scenes feel like they drag on a little too long.
Yeah.
But overall, I definitely enjoyed the fact that you are caring about these characters a lot more than you would in a lot of standard slasher movies. The people are kind of like, just meat for the grinder in a lot of those movies, and you don't really get to know them so much other than they're horny and they like to drink.
That was, for me, this film's biggest strength, is the way it wrote the characters. I was very impressed with that. I liked these guys. They weren't, they were three-dimensional. They weren't just, the horny guy and the slut and the nerd. They weren't just, they weren't templates. Like, we actually got to care about these guys. Like, the rich kid is actually a pretty good guy. The surfer is brave and goes back for his friends. Like, I love that. And I just, I wish this film was a little bit more well-known, because I think this is a lot more well-rounded than a lot of the other slasher films I've watched, at least in regards to character.
Oh, certain. Yeah, absolutely. Even though you kind of think about the tropes that were already being set up, even as early as with Friday the 13th, and kind of how you had this whole aesthetic of, here are the kids going somewhere. And I kind of made a note about this when I was watching it, is that this movie felt to me a lot more like the Funhouse or Castle Freak and Black Christmas, in kind of how it was more about, somebody who's a hideous human being and he's deformed and may or may not be in the house that everything's happening in. So it kind of has like part haunted house, part monster movie, but it's also a slasher in a way. Um, a lot about the Funhouse I kept hitting in my head when I was watching this, even though the special effects for uh, the gonk, whatever, like what the fuck is that? Um, yeah, for that poor bastard was not that good. And I can see they tried to hide it as much as they could. Um, but overall, I mean, yeah, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed this movie a lot.
To me, like what kept coming back, this to me is the closest we've ever come to an R-rated Scooby-Doo movie. Like you add a dog and like a mask reveal at the end, and this is a Scooby-Doo movie straight up. It just has that tone of like, haunted house, kids, like split up gang, let's find, like, let's solve this mystery. I just kept getting that vibe.
Yeah, you're just waiting for it's old man Withers. Oh, would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for you damn kids. Yeah.
I think at the end, like if it had been revealed that like, it was all like all of this was part of the prank, that would have been fucking awesome. Like the gonk, Andrew, whatever his name is, takes off his mask, and it's the fucking, Peter. Like he faked his own death. All of this is to, fuck up the freshman. That would have been amazing.
Yeah. I even kind of liked that there was an element of like, like with the prank, the whole prank setup of it, but then this house is also set up for that kind of stuff, and you're just like, wait, what? Like, how is this all really happening? And for the amount of bodies that pile up in this movie, it's really kind of like relatively bloodless, which is unheard of at the time. Um, even though I did like when I can't remember his name, got his head snapped backwards. That was great. I really enjoyed that.
That's always cool to see. I think Linda Blair was good. I think she's a little distracting because she's Linda Blair. Everyone else is so unknown, and then there's the girl from The Exorcist. Like, but that's the problem she was trying to shake with this movie, and it just didn't work. But I'm glad she eventually came to terms with that. I mean, she did that that parody movie in the '90s with Leslie Nielsen, so she got over it. Vincent Van Patten plays Seth, the horny surfer who overcomes his fear and goes back to help his friends. Van Patten never really left TV roles and recurring roles on Baywatch, The Young and the Restless, and he's a frequent commentator on the World Poker Tour, which I thought was kind of interesting. He's like on the poster and everything. So he found success in his own way.
That's oddly strange. I mean, I guess you got to make money somehow.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he's not sitting there commentating on poker hands going, all right, we've got the river card coming, and let's hope we don't have a scary reveal like that time I was in Hell Night. I did that movie with Linda Blair, right, Ted? Yeah, you mention that every time you're on the show, Vince. Nobody can forget it. Just stuff like that. Have you ever seen The Grand?
No.
That is a poker movie that has Woody Harrelson and Werner Herzog among the cast. It is a wild ass fucking movie. You've got to find it. It's hilarious.
Hell yeah, I'm in. You had me at Herzog. Like, fantastic.
That's another guy. Like, his whole early set of movies is something else to behold. Like, he is a weird fucking guy, and he was all about making art for art's sake. Like, he didn't care how he got what he got, and he would go toe to toe with a crazy asshole like Klaus Kinski just to get what he could get.
I back when we were doing the Weird Shit Wednesdays on the show's original format, I had one scheduled for the Herzog Kinski relationship. Like, we were going to go into that, but we decided to change up the format and end those. But I've always been fascinated by those two guys and their toxic as fuck relationship that gave birth to so many incredible films. But it's just insane. I've been meaning to watch that documentary. What I think My Best Fiend, I think it was called.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to check that out for quite a while.
Yeah, and it's so weird that like Herzog can be this, you know, very like visceral and like just operating almost like an exploitation filmmaker in some of the movies that he did early on, and then be really like introspective and philosophical in the documentaries that he did. He's such an interesting human being. Like he just has so many sides to him that he's able to lean on. Because I had seen a bunch of his stuff. Like I think I first saw his version of Nosferatu, and then saw like Eyzaguirre, the Wrath of God, Fitzcarraldo, and then it was like, oh, you know, he also did documentaries. You ever heard of Grizzly Man? I was like, no. And then I fucking watched it, and I was like, of course Herzog would, of course he would do this. You know, like he's like eulogizing this guy, but he's also like making fun of him the whole time. I'm just like, God damn it. You're such a dick, but I love you. Like,
what is wild that after all that, when then we just see Werner Herzog pop up in The Mandalorian as a Star Wars character now. Like, what is this guy? Like, I don't think he's ever seen Star Wars. I don't think he's a fan. He just showed up. Like, I don't understand any of this.
Oh yeah, I'm sure Jon Favreau was like, you know, who'd be really great as this guy right here, fucking Herzog.
But then for Herzog to agree, like, yes, I would be the best. Wonderful. Yeah, he's a guy. Yeah, I just watched the original Nosferatu for the first time today, and it's pretty breathtaking. So I want to check out Herzog's version next.
It's something else like that. Like when you go into the history of it and find out, you know, why it was, you know, made the way it was and how it kind of had to like not be so direct of a reference of Dracula, and then you really find that it's like probably one of the, other than I think like my top two favorite horror movies from that era are that movie and The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Like those two are like on opposite ends of the spectrum, but they're just like, they're so breathtaking. So breathtaking.
If we're talking 20s horror, I'm a big fan of The Man Who Laughs. Peter Barton plays Jeff, the rich kid with a heart of gold. Barton also played Doug in Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter, and went on to star in 179 episodes of The Young and the Restless. Turns out the only place to go after low-budget horror is the soaps. I haven't seen Friday the 13th 4 in a very long time. I don't remember Doug.
Yeah, he's probably forgettable. Barbara Crampton did a lot of work in soap operas before she did Reanimator. So it's definitely one of those ways that like actors get trained to, you know, read lines and consume that kind of stuff and understand, you know, how to get things done quickly. So it's not, I don't think it's that much of a stretch, but it's very interesting that you see somebody like go from making movies to doing soaps, and making soaps is like, it's fucking sprinting the whole time.
Yeah. 12,000 plus episodes. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Every day.
God, my mom loves soap operas. Oh.
No, my family never dug into daytime TV. Not quite. It's all cooking shows for my family. It's funny. Jensen Ackles was on a soap before he got into Supernatural. And there's an episode of Supernatural where Linda Blair guest stars. And that was in my head the whole time I was watching this movie. Because there's a scene at the end of it where Jensen Ackles and Jared Padalecki, they were talking to her and they bid farewell. And Jensen goes, "She look familiar to you?" He's like, no, not really. Why? He's like, I don't know, but all of a sudden I'm really have a hankering for some pea soup. Like they just walked away.
Oh my God.
It was cheesy as fuck, but it made me laugh. Suki Goodwin, who plays Denise, had a minor role in an episode of the TV series Voyagers, and then this. That was all she's ever done. So sometimes it just doesn't work out for people. But I liked her a lot.
A lot of the reviews I'd gone through, they were mentioning how people really loved her performance.
She was just a good, she was bubbly and happy and crazy, and then her death was so unceremonious. She just gets dragged out of her room and then shows up dead at the end of the movie. I thought that was kind of a cop out a little bit. The whole rescue mission kind of fell apart really fast. So Kevin Brophy's Peter, the frat leader who makes this all happen. Brophy had bit parts in various TV show episodes as well as various low-budget films I've never heard of. And his character isn't nearly as douchey as I was expecting him to be. Like from the get-go, he's kind of hitting on this one woman, and then it's like, wait a minute, who's that? I want that one now. Like that was like what a dick move. But as the movie progresses, he's actually kind of smart, like in the way he's like devising all this. It's a very elaborate hazing.
Oh yeah, he has way too much fun with this, and I was kind of impressed with the amount of work that they would have had to go through just to do this. And you're like, okay, you don't just do this because you're an asshole. You do this because you really enjoy this kind of thing, and he really enjoys the power that he gets out of this. So I'll give him credit for that.
It is funny that I never tried to join a frat or anything, but I'm fairly certain that spend a night in a haunted house would never be one of their hazing rituals, like in any situation. It's funny that they went there. They clearly, and who's keeping this place up and running? I mean, because the sheets aren't dusty or anything. It looks kept up, this mansion. So clearly the frat is keeping this place, alive.
Well, I mean, when you supposedly have a deformed man-child that's been roaming around, what else is he going to do with his other 364 days out of the year besides keep all the candles lit and shit?
I can't picture that, the Andrew Garth monster making a fucking bed. I can't picture that at all. But it's got to be what's going on. God. He's not even he's just a dude. Why doesn't he just come out and say this is my house? He's not. It's the 80s. He's got right. His property's 9/10 of the law here. He can do that.
Yeah, or he's very much into his Second Amendment rights, and but he takes bearing arms literally when he uses them as weapons. I don't know.
It would be hilarious if this entire movie, all he's trying to do is give them a cease and desist. Just this is my house, get out. Tired of this goddamn frat. So Hell Night. Every year. Imagine the climax. That'd be amazing. He's just I am sick and tired of this. Nobody killed him. It should have been a Tucker and Dale situation where everyone accidentally killed themselves. And he's just every year this happens. I don't want any part of this. I think the second half of this film's pretty by the numbers. I think the buildup is really good, but I think, it kind of turns into, gets predictable in the second half. Apart from the second killer, which doesn't make any fucking sense, and I got thoughts on that later. So Hell Night has an IMDb score of 5.8, Rotten Tomatoes score of 60%, grossed about $2.3 million on a budget of $1.4 million, so I wouldn't exactly call it a hit. It's currently available to stream on Shudder if you'd like to form your own opinion. So with that, let's talk some highlights. So the first scene that really caught my eye was when Peter just pulls out a loaded gun and shoots the lock on the on the house, and nobody reacts. Everyone's just like, oh, okay. Like, this is some shit he does all the time. Just solves all his problems with his fucking 38.
I mean, he's a guy that drives a fucking Corvette or some shit. Of course he carries a gun around. He's just fucking making sure everybody knows how big his dick is. Like, come on, guy.
But it ends up being blanks except for that first one, because that clearly shot the lock open. So the story of the Garth family is pretty good build-up. It's a good ghost story about this, guy who had so many deformed children it made him go crazy, which is really sad. But it's the 80s.
I mean, so there was somebody who wrote a review, and I think it was the wording they used to describe the place is really like should have been left back in the 80s. Like, they called it Mongoloid Manor, and I was like, all right, look, dude, I'm all about trying to catch people's attention, but seriously, I mean, if you really want to get to the nuts and bolts of it, like, I don't know why they kept having kids. Like, after the first one comes out, you're just like, okay, well, maybe we shouldn't continue this. But yeah, like even that whole story, like, I kind of, part of me was like, okay, I see where you're going with this. Kind of hope it pays off. And it was pretty standard stuff. Trying to set up that there may still be somebody left in the house. Which is where I'm like pulling Castle Freak and on another level Funhouse, in that there's this monster somewhere. In Funhouse, it's right out in the open, but it's wearing a giant paper mache Frankenstein head. And in Castle Freak, there's this weirdo brother that everybody forgot about, and oh, by the way, he's just been hanging around with a bed sheet and chains, just creeping, staring at people. So, yeah, I mean, it was something that can get very boring and repetitive, but again, they were using it in a good way to kind of set everything up, with like the whole wider angle of it being an initiation. And there are other horror flicks that kind of used college as a setting. So it's definitely not like a totally original setup. And I honestly feel like it's something that you really didn't see a lot of until it came around again with like Urban Legend and one of the Scream sequels that were taking the whole college kid angle instead of it always being around drunken, horny teenagers.
Was it Friday the 13th that kind of popularized the whole like deformed child being the bad guy thing? Because I noticed that a lot in the early 80s, of just like the villain being a child who was like abused because he was different. It has not aged well.
Oh, no, definitely not. I mean, especially when you throw in, like Pamela Voorhees saying, "Oh, he was special," and using turns of phrase like that, where it's like, "Oh, you grow up in the '80s, you know what somebody means when they say their child is special." So, yeah, I definitely think it's something that for somebody who is trying to be really super critical of those kinds of things, it definitely could have somebody argue that you're trying to paint people with disabilities and birth defects as like these terrible monsters and blah blah blah. But honestly, I think when things like that come out, I think it says more about the people who are coming up with those ideas and how they're treating them than it says about anything else. Because you can watch a movie like that. You can watch a movie like that and appreciate it for what it is, and then still be able to look at it and go, okay, I personally, like, I don't have feelings like that. And you can still think, well, why did they need to do that? You know,
Yeah.
I don't necessarily, because that was actually to kind of circle back before when I was bringing up the Wrong Turn movies. That is something that somebody brought up in regards to like what those, because I mean it's all, you know, inbred cannibal family in the mountains that are the antagonists of the whole franchise. So it's like, oh, so you're saying that all hillbilly redneck people are, you know, inbred cannibals? Is that what you're trying to say? Like, no, dude, like it's a fucking monster movie. Like, just calm down for a second. Not everything needs, you know, this deep introspection. Just take it for what it is.
Yeah. But I would argue that, you know, any inbred family found in the mountains, I would bet money they are also cannibals. There's no way there's a good story coming out of that. But, you know, with the early 80s, like everything, you know, every monster had to have a gimmick. It had to, you know, why am I afraid of this thing? You know, Michael was, you know, mutant, super strong. Freddy was a child killer, and Jason was special. I don't know, but it's just weird that like all we know about the monster in this film is that he was deformed, his father hated him, killed the rest of his family, and he escaped. And even that is like secondhand, told from the leader of a frat. So what do we really know?
Exactly.
Also, Peter had a key to the front gate, so why do you have to shoot the lock to show off the size of his dick? Oh, there you go. I answered my own question. There's a line in this film that's probably going to go down as one of the funniest lines I've ever heard in a horror film, maybe in a movie ever. And it's after the screaming happens and both parties meet on the stairs and they're like, why were you screaming? And they're like, we weren't screaming. And Seth just goes, if you weren't screaming and we weren't screaming, someone's trying to mind fuck us. I fucking loved that. Like, he wasn't immediately like, it's probably haunted. He's like, nope, we're getting fucked with. Something's up here. Great.
I mean that definitely shows that they're a little bit smarter than, you know, just some random teens that are partying in an abandoned house. I would think that they kind of already have an idea that they're being set up for something. So I think they're definitely on their toes already, even though Seth is pretty much only got one thing on his mind the entire time. So kudos to him for letting his top brain do some thinking for a little bit.
Oh, so does Jeff. He's just hiding it really well. Yeah, these kids, you know, they're supposed to be smart. They got into college. And if you're in college, odds are, you know, you're a little bit more, you know, smarter than some of the other, you know, high school idiots in horror movies. But not by much. I mean, most of them die still. But just that line was so great. Like, there was no even immediate thought of like, this place is haunted. It's those guys are fucking with us. Just straight up. Perfect. And it lulls you into kind of a false sense of security so that when the first kill happens, it's actually pretty freaky. When someone's girlfriend, I don't remember whose girlfriend it was, one of the frat dudes, when she gets just like, Andrew comes out of the ground, grabs her, and then just cuts her fucking head off. Like, whoa. Now this is where we are. This is this kind of movie now.
Yeah. And that was quite abrupt too. Like, I was not expecting that. When it happened, I was like, oh shit. And so this is something where I was like, I was a little bummed by the editing, because it literally, like, it left just enough that you just barely saw it, and then it was like, yeah, we're going on the next time. I'm like, you bastards, like, don't leave me hanging like that. I'm all keyed up and you didn't even finish me off. You just left me fucking half-masted. Come on.
They didn't have the budget. They had the budget for like a fraction of a second of a decapitation. That's all they had.
But A gay porn director pulling away for the money shot. Come on. I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it.
Oh my god. We get a little bit more throughout. I mean, that's just the first one. We get like Scott, we get to see his head completely turn around. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I'll give him that. I mean that's cool, but like I'm gonna have to give him a slight tisk for just getting me there, getting me all ready to go, and then just like, I'm not gonna give it to you all the way. Just like, you fucker. But that's also the gorehound in me just wanting carnage. So,
yeah,
can't be winners all the time.
Well, I thought Peter's death gave me a pretty nice filmgasm personally. I thought finding Scott's body to the swelling music to escaping Andrew Garth and then just getting impaled in the hedge maze, that whole sequence I thought was really well done. That was unnerving because Peter was not somebody I was expecting to die. I thought he was going to make it at least to the end of the movie, but nope, the support system goes out like that. Well done, Andrew.
But I mean, that's good, man. Like I like that. I like that it plays with your expectations, because imagine not having that kind of knowledge of how these kinds of movies work and just being totally immersed in that experience. And then you're just like, you have no idea who's going to live or die. And you have no idea that, like, he's this kind of character. So you're like, oh, clearly he's going to be hanging around for this one. He's such a powerful presence. And you're like, nah. Fuck that guy. He's just as dead as everybody else.
Well, here's the thing. I'm familiar with horror movies. I know how to read these things. I know when things are going to happen. And there's a scene in this movie that scared the absolute hell out of me. And it's when Marty and Jeff are in the bedroom after they just figured out what's going on. And in the background, you just see the rug start rising. Like, fuck, man. I wasn't paying attention. I looked Jesus. I audibly was like, ah! Then it just gets closer. Like, that was brilliant. That was done so well. That freaked me out. And then we get that scene where Seth goes to the cops. And that was hilarious. The cops are just like, we had enough of your shit. Get out of here. Like, terrible cops. I mean, he's got a bloody wound on his shoulder. And they're like, fuck off, kid. We don't have time for this. But then Seth sacks up. You
should have told him he had a bunch of drugs.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to reverse psychology, these cops. But I love that he nuts up and steals a shotgun and goes back. That's awesome. I thought he was going to either be killed on his way out or just disappear from the movie. But no, the dude, goes back to save his friends. That's awesome.
Oh man, so when he got up and he did his whole little fucking surfer monologue, I was just like, oh, I can't wait to get it. He tried to get all serious and he took out his fake fucking mustache and was like, dude, no. But yeah, like you said, he surprised you, and I was really surprised by how he turned from being this goof to actually turning into a really, really interesting character. And that's, again, we'll probably come back to it one more time, I'm sure, where the strength of this movie lies, is the fact that you actually give a shit about these characters.
Yeah, but then he gets the Dick Halloran death where he just walks in ready to, kick ass, and then Andrew just grabs him out of the corner of the hallway, and the gun just lays there. Fuck. So, Linda Blair, I think, was underutilized in this film. I think that her character is pretty stereotypical. Hiding behind Jeff, not really taking charge until she's the last one. I think it would have been cooler if she was the leader of the group, tough, scared, but cautious. But she's kind of just hiding behind Jeff and his pitchfork the whole time. I think if you're going to cast, a recognizable face like Linda Blair, you should use her.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think she was even kind of characterizing herself as being rather resourceful, and she was talking about, being a mechanic. And you're like, wait a minute, holy shit. Yeah, okay, all right. So I was expecting her to like have Jeff standing behind her while she's taking care, or even like maybe like set traps or do something. And it was slightly a bit of a letdown. And I really was kind of hoping that something would come sooner than, oh, there's nobody left. Now what are you going to do?
Yeah. Well, I do like that her saying she's a mechanic. I do like that comes back at the end when she like gets out of the car and like fixes the battery or whatever she did. I like that they included that little bit of like, remember, she's resourceful, but should have come up earlier. I agree. Like when they're exploring the cavern underneath this house, which weird. A house in the middle of like LA, wherever this is, has a fucking catacombs underneath it. And the family's there. And we have that bit earlier with Seth where he like takes out the second killer in the pond. But that made no sense at all. Like, why is there a second killer? When was there a second killer? We've only ever seen the one with the yellow face kill these people. Who's this like werewolf looking motherfucker that just comes out of nowhere? And I didn't think that was particularly well written.
No way. No. Because I kind of liked that there was a sort of like ambush quality to Andrew, if you want to call him that. That was because that was, for the time, it's different, and it's allowing, I'm sure you're already kind of setting up through the like Peter and the guys setting up the pranks that there's a lot more to this house than what you're seeing. So wouldn't it stand to reason that the guy who's lurking and stalking this place is, capable of coming at you from wherever? Yeah. I kind of wish they would have played to that a little bit more.
Yeah,
for sure. Than to be like, oh, the twist is there's somebody else. And it's like, oh, no, fuck that.
Yeah, if they used the traps set by the frat boys to like capture Andrew, that would have been really cool. If they used the ghost visual to freak him out or something like that, like that would have been neat. It would have turned into like a Home Alone type of thing, and that would have made this kind of stand out a little bit more.
Yeah, that would have been really interesting. Like him getting scared by the fucking skeleton popping out of the closet door, just something.
Yeah. Instead, we get, it was cool that the fence came back. I mean, when Seth climbs over the fence, I was fully expecting him to like impale his ass and then just be out of the movie. But when Andrew gets, fenced, you celebrate a little bit. It's a pretty cool death, but it could have been better. Here's some Filmgazm facts. Number 1, Kevin Brophy, who plays Peter, said in an interview that he still has the purple cape that he wears in the movie and that he has worn it every Halloween since making this film. I don't know if that should be like, if I should be happy about that or just a little sad.
Oh, fuck no. If that was the only movie I ever made, I would be all about it. Are you kidding me? Nobody would know. Nobody knew what the hell you're wearing it for or like why. And you're just like, it's just for me. I'm not doing it for you. It's just for me. Makes me happy.
Fair enough. Yeah, it is like all he ever did. So yeah, okay. He can have it. He can have the purple cape. I don't know what the hell he was supposed to be. Was he like a wizard or something? I love movie
wizard, a jester, something.
I love movie Halloween costumes because they're not allowed to use licensed characters, so everyone just looks like pirate or Robin Hood or just random. I love that so much because no one's dressed up as a pirate for Halloween for like 50 years, unless it was Jack Sparrow.
Yeah, I only dressed up as a pirate one time when I was a kid, and like every year after that, it was like I was a vampire, or I was actually I did straight up like the old school like plastic mask and fucking plastic fucking costume gigs. Yeah, I did a lot of those.
When I was like 4 or 5, my parents they painted me up to look like a skeleton, and they put me in like a black pants and shirt and like a black hat, and I won a costume contest because the person thought I was that movie Dead Presidents. Yeah. My parents just rolled with it and were like, "Yep, that's what he is."
And lo and behold, yeah, and lo and behold, if you were to do something like that now, you'd get roasted.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. I love that story. I don't know what they won. I think it was like a gift card to like a costume store or something. They were like, "Yep."
That's
Number 2.
wonderful.
Yeah, it's great. Future director Frank Darabont had one of his earliest film credits on this movie as a production assistant. That's pretty cool. So you don't have Hell Night, you don't have The Walking Dead, or Shawshank, or The Green Mile. Pretty cool.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, think about that. Like there is like, I mean, and then it's like the producer Erwin Yablis, like all these other movies that this guy made, and you're just like, holy shit. Like Chuck Russell was one of the producers. Chuck Russell, he also made one of my favorite remakes of any movie ever. His version of The Blob is fucking wonderful, and he was a producer on this movie. Like, come on. Like this is just proof that anybody and everybody got their start in the 80s, whether it was through Roger Corman, Lloyd Kaufman, or fucking, you know, whatever. Like, everybody was making movies at that time, and yeah, it's wonderful.
Yep. What's the guy's porn name again? Lancer Brooks. Giving Frank Darabont his start. Number 3, the murderous monster Andrew Garth was played by a young German actor who sadly died in a car accident before the film was released. And neither of the monster actors have any credit on this film at all.
It's very, very strange. I didn't even know that. That's fucking terrible.
Yeah.
Can't even give the guy credit. Come on.
He's not in he's not on the film credits. He's not in the IMDb credits, not even as like uncredited. He's nowhere. None of them. And yeah, he died like a few days after this. But that's like, are they allowed to? Isn't that exploiting labor? Like, are they allowed to do that?
I don't know. I mean, unless it's a kid or something.
I think that's even worse. Yeah, I don't think you can do that. Like, I don't know. It just seems like something that would happen in like the 30s, not in the 80s. So I give Hell Night a 7. It's pretty entertaining. The characters are well written, and some scenes are actually pretty scary. But the 2 monster twist makes no sense, and some scenes just drag on for way too long. People just going from like one door to the other, like tiptoeing with a candle because they're so scared, and that takes like 6-7 minutes.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. A 7 sounds about right. Just for coming out at a time where you had Evil Dead, like I said, The Howling, My Bloody Valentine, which we already talked about, The Burning, the 2 of the bigger slasher franchises coming out with sequels. The fact that it was unique enough that it's still hanging around at this point and is revered in its own way for its own strengths, I think definitely is. We're very thankful that the book put this one out there, and because I don't know when I would have gotten to it. I've also gone on a bit of a spending spree in buying a bunch of movies, so I have no idea when I would have gotten around to seeing it before it would have just left Shudder or Prime or whatever, and I would have been like, oh fuck. I did just look it up. Shout Factory still has it. So if you are keen to add it to your collection, it's still out there. So
What was the what's the going price right now? You remember that?
it's $25, which if you think about a movie that's and the thing that I always like about it is like I'm getting those types of movies a lot for the extras. I want to see a lot of those things. I found the Blu-ray release of Fright Night from the company that released it in the UK, and on that release they have the You're So Cool Brewster documentary included on there. So I was like, yeah, duh. So I went and bought that. I think it was like maybe $20 US. So the company that did it is Eureka. So if you want to check them out, they had some other stuff. But yeah, and for movies like that, like I definitely want a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, just because you want to find out a lot more, and that would be why. I mean, $25. I'm okay with paying that for a movie that not a lot of people know about, and I think that could definitely be something that would be a little fun to have on in the background. Party movie.
Yeah.
People know Linda Blair, but they might not know this one. So why not throw it on and just enjoy yourself?
I got that edition of Fright Night for Christmas last year. It's beautiful. I've been hunting down a Fright Night Blu-ray for as long as I can remember. So now that I have it, I have a little, I don't have a lot of direction anymore, because that was like my whole life. Like, find Fright Night. Now what? But I got a really cool T-shirt that just says Fright Night in the font, and it's just like, it's so beautiful. I watched it. It's so crisp, and the documentary is so cool. It's amazing. It's awesome. So I totally get why people want supreme editions of these films. It's awesome.
Oh, so if you want some extra cool stuff, if you go to Tom Holland's website, he has available some other commentaries that he did with other people for Fright Night.
Wow.
Just available to download. So you like download file to your phone, and then just pop on Fright Night, pop in the old earbuds, and listen to Tom Holland talk about Fright Night on a different commentary, because there's like 3 or 4 of them out there on his website. So
that's awesome.
Go nuts.
That's really cool. Yeah, Fright Night's been one of my favorite episodes that I've gotten to do on this show. That was fun. Austin had never seen it before, so getting to kind of introduce Fright Night to him was one of the highlights of this podcast so far. That was a blast. But we still got the remake and Fright Night 2 in the works. So one day.
Yeah. Hey. So I forgot to tell you about this. That website where I got Fright Night 2 from probably has one of the best website names ever. It's called StinkyTuna.com. And if you check them out, they've got a bunch of other stuff. But yeah, the fact that they have Fright Night 2 and it's reasonably priced, I was like, gonna get that. And now the fact that I've got the first Fright Night coming, I've already got a nice little set. The only thing I need to do now is get fucking Vamp, which is another weird ass 80s vampire movie. So yeah, I'm all about it. Bring me the weird stuff.
Hell yeah, I'm gonna be checking out that website as soon as we're done here. I just got $800 reimbursed to me through some college glitch thing that they were like, hey, here's $800 in grant money. And I'm like, cool, I'm buying movies. So let's check that shit out.
Yeah, man. Yeah, if you want some recommendations, just let me know. I've got bunches.
My God, I'm already on the website. I couldn't wait. Johnny Dangerously, Blu-ray, $13. That's fucking beautiful. I'm gonna be spending some money tonight. That's all for this week's folks. I'd like to thank Josh for helping me take apart this oddball 80s horror flick. Always a pleasure.
Oh man, I love it. I can't wait till we figure out the next one. It's going to be good stuff.
Hell yeah. Next week, we're getting even weirder because it's St. Patrick's Day. And what other horror film could we possibly talk about than the 1993 cult classic Leprechaun, starring Warwick Davis and a young Jennifer Aniston? It's a pretty simple premise. An evil leprechaun wants his pot of gold. He's willing to kill anyone who gets in his way. The beginning of a franchise that to date has spawned 8 films, none of which I have seen yet. So tune in next Wednesday to hear Julie and I talk Leprechaun. Also, don't miss the hilarious hitman comedy In Bruges on Oscar Sunday, Apple TV Plus's new heist thriller Cherry on the sneak preview, and the 2018 comedy Booksmart on Guys Who Giggle. Going to be a great bunch of films. Until then, if your desired frat wants you to spend the night in a haunted house and then all your friends are murdered by a deranged psychopath because of it, maybe you don't join that frat. See you next Wednesday. Keep watching movies.